And we're trying to manage a rocket ship with a society and political system that doesn't work anymore. So we need to reinvent capitalism. The tax book is like 600 pages. There's one line that says, every income is taxable. The rest 600 pages are loopholes, how not to pay taxes. I know we're not going through a very comfortable time, but believe me, it's better than any other country. I believe the US is going to come out way stronger in the next 10 years.
Let's talk a little bit about the current economic and the markets. You have, like our friend Alistair, international broad experience in that. And looking through that lens, as we've done some with this weekend already, looking at the factors that are there, what are some of the threats or dangers, what could be opportunities, and how could people, kind of like you help people do with their businesses, what do they look at in terms of their strengths? So, the DOS equation, basically.
So, when COVID started, our business went significantly down. The last 2 weeks of March, we had 90% revenue loss those 2 weeks, and I got really scared. By the way, April was our best month in history. We did triple what we did in March. But March was really, really bad. And I called Vern and said, hey, these are the numbers. We need to do something. And we did some aggressive changes on the business that ended up not being a problem. But we said we have to increase our talk time. You will not be able to get out of this crisis thinking. You're going to be get out of this talking. So let's increase our talk time. Let's talk to as many entrepreneurs as we can around the world. And I began calling clients, past clients, everyone. I was on the phone all the day with entrepreneurs all over the world. Dubai, Mexico, Hong Kong, Argentina, whatever. Just trying to get a sense of what was going on. And I started reading a lot again. I read a lot on business, but I started reading a lot business of trends, the economy. I read all the books of all the guys that are online telling you that the world's going to end. But it was a great perspective, by the way. And this is kind of my feeling. And this came out with 2 or 3 books. I don't know if someone has read The Fourth Turning. Great book. If you could read it, The Fourth Turning, I think it's an amazing book. So what they explain is that the world has this cycle of around 88 years. And like human beings and like the weather, we go from spring to summer to fall to winter. And today we're in the winter stage of the world in this cycle. And we're trying to have the economy like we're in the summer, and we're entering winter. And the social systems, the constitution that we wrote, the political system, everything is being designed 200 years ago when even the light didn't exist. The Constitution of the US, the Constitution of Mexico, or most of the countries, were written before electricity started. And today, with the internet and technologies that we have, it's a completely different ballgame. So I have a picture that I show on some slides, that there's this wagon that says cultural, social systems, political systems, everything, and instead of having a horse, holding like a rocket ship. And we're trying to manage a rocket ship with a society and political system that doesn't work anymore. So we need to reinvent capitalism. The capitalism that we have today, I think has been great for the last 50, 80 years. I think it already expired. We need to kind of reinvent capitalism. And we're reinventing it. There's another book called Pendulum. I don't know if you read him, by Roy Williams. Yeah. And he talks that in society we go in this pendulum, 44 years similar, between the we and the me cycle. And when we get to the me cycle, you get to the witch hunts. And it's interesting that the presidents are using that word a lot. And by the way, if you go back, the last one was Second World War, when Germany was chasing the Jewish community. So we're coming back to this cycle exactly the same, just in a different perspective. But we're going to need, I think we're going to need like a decade of reorganization. So I believe the next decade, the 20s to the 30s, is going to be a really complicated decade in ups and downs. And we're going to have to find a different organization of the world. The last world order, the US told the world, I will be the police officer of the world. I will be the police of all the seas, so we could do commerce all over the world, just with one condition, that the trade of the world is in US dollars. And everyone said, like, yours. we all accepted the US to be the currency of the world, as long as the US was the police officer of the world. And it was very comfortable for the rest of the countries. At that moment, the US had the political will and money to do it. Today, there's no political will or money to do that. So if you think we had pirates in the past, we're going to have pirates everywhere on the seas. If you see a map of the world, imagine you're in Germany or you're in one of these East European countries. You could get attacked like this without even blinking. For someone to attack the US, you have the two seas. It's really hard to attack the US. And the US back then needed the oil from Saudi Arabia and all these things. So it was in our best interest from the US to be the police of the world. Today, the US is energy independent. They have Mexico and Canada for natural resources and cheap labor. They don't need the rest of the world. So I think the US is coming back and said, hey, we need to get reorganized. We need to reborn or redecide who we want to be. And that's all the issues that we're having. And they're not going to care about the rest of the world. So I think it's going to be a much more unstable world. I've been saying that 2019 was the peak of globalism, the way we knew it. You could get a container for $2,000 to go to China. That's gone. That's really difficult. If there's one thing that Trump and Biden agree, is that China is the enemy. And both of them are going to go really bad against China. I don't know if you saw what they said yesterday. The US gave political asylum to anyone from Hong Kong for 6 months or 3 months. The Chinese are livid about it. They're super mad with the US. But they cannot do anything. But I'm sure they told the US, you're out of line. But the US is willing to say that. I lived in Hong Kong. I was there when it transitioned from England to China. There was a perfect agreement that it was 50 years, Hong Kong was going to be their own police, their own governors, their own laws. Everything's gone to waste. I have a lot of friends still living in Hong Kong, and they called me and said, it was a lie. The Chinese government opened up and become like pre-business, and like 15 years ago, it began kind of going back. You see what happened with Alibaba founder. Mm-hmm. The guy one day talked bad about the Communist Party, and the guy disappeared for 3 months. And he hasn't spoke publicly since. I imagine they put this guy in some weird chamber for 3 months. Like, no, seriously.
Yeah.
The guy went through a really painful part of his life. He's a billionaire in China. He disappeared. He was really public. Look for any video of this guy. There's nothing online until the day he disappeared was when he had some negative comments with the Chinese government. And by the way, China will never be the world economy, the world most powerful economy.
Why do you say that?
So 2 things. For you to be the most powerful economy, you have to have world trade and be good with other countries. And everyone in the world, and it happens in Mexico, it's happening in Africa. The Chinese are braving the countries giving you loans, but they're not finishing well. So let me tell you a story. I went to give this lecture to Sri Lanka in 2019. And after the lecture, they invited me to have dinner to this very nice hotel in the beach. And I was having dinner, and there was a lot of light coming kind of from the corner. I said, hey guys, what's that? And they said, well, that's China. And I was like, what do you mean it's China? So the Chinese government came and said, hey, you have to develop a really, really big port. I'll give you all the money, let's develop the port. And the Sri Lankans said like, wow, great. They built a really, really big port with money lended by the Chinese. When Sri Lanka could not pay the loan, that it happened 2 or 3 years after, what do you think the Chinese did? We're going to change the rules. We're going to operate the port, and now they own the port. And they did an agreement like England did with Hong Kong. And now there's a piece run by China in Sri Lanka. And people, when they told me, when I was there, I said, like, why? And they said, well, we're strategically located. And I was like, you're in the world, in the corner of nothing. Like, you're not located anywhere, anything important. And they said, you're wrong. We're located in the south of India. And China and India hate themselves. The only port the Chinese have to touch below to go to Saudi Arabia and the oil is through Sri Lanka. They have to stop in Sri Lanka to get gas. So they bribe us, and now we have an uncomfortable uncle that owns a piece of our land. And that's the way China is running it. So that's one. And now the world is realizing that.
But that seems like it's working out pretty well for China.
So yes, in the short term. But I'll give you the example of Mexico. So in Mexico, everyone knows Cancun, the Riviera Maya. Like 6 years ago, there was a China Mart. The Chinese went and bought like 2,000 acres of land, and they were going to build a port in the south of Cancun. And then we did a bid to build a train between Mexico and Querétaro, one of the biggest cities, like a 2.5-hour drive. And the Chinese won it. Finance, engineering, machines, everything. And one day, out of the blue, both of the contracts got canceled. One day I woke up, opened the newspaper, and both of the contracts were canceled the same day. Mexican president got a phone call from the US president, I'm sure, and said, you have two options, or China or us. And those two ports or those two projects, if you want to be with the US, you cancel them. If you want to do them with China, I'm off. And the Mexican president canceled them one day without a discussion. So it's happening, and we're realizing it. So that's the first one.
So that's with our neighbors to the south. That's Mexico. But we're not really treating our other allies the way we have in the past. So it seems like there's some new realignments happening, and we're kind of we're kind of backstage now, as you said. We're not the policemen of the...
So El Salvador is having those issues. Peru is having those issues. Of course, Cuba is having those issues, that they're already in bed with China because China has been financing all their ports and airports and things like that. And that's the only way they had to finance them. So yes, and some countries are going to be uncomfortable because they will still want to do trade with the US, but now they have China inside their country. And China said, well, if you want me to do your port and do your airports and all of this, you're going to have to trade in Chinese yuan and the rest.
Yeah, so then what puts our reserve currency on the line, in jeopardy? And when, well, I don't want to say when, I'll say if we lose that.
So yes.
What happens?
Yes, but let me put this in perspective. So if I go in Mexico and I want to buy a house, I could get a loan for my house in pesos or dollars. Every bank gives me an option. But if I want to finance my company and get like a $10 million loan, they never lend me in pesos. They lend me in dollars. You know how much loans are outside of the US in US denominated currency? Over $30 billion. So even if we want to, everyone go against the US dollar, whatever, we still have $30 billion that we have to pay loan plus interest. We're going to have to demand dollars no matter what. And the US is too powerful, and people all over the world knows, like, do you trust the core values of the American people or the Chinese people? American people 10 times. So whenever you understand core values and who you're going to get in bed for the next 20 years, you think about it twice. But by the way, Africa, China has won Africa. Yeah. The US has nothing in Africa. That's going to be a battleground that I thought it was going to be a battleground. It's not anymore. China won already.
You give me a lot of insights because of your connections that you just said US were the best of the worst. So there's a really international flight to quality because there's still the belief in the U.S. What in terms of overall?
So let's talk about that. 2008, when the U.S. got into all this trouble with currencies, with the mortgages, go back and see, the US dollar got stronger against every other currency in the world. And I was like, wait, how did the Mexican peso devaluate 40% against the dollar if the US is the one that is in trouble? Why is Mexico devaluating? Because of all the wealthy people in Mexico went flight to quality. And they send all their money to the US. That's it. That's tradition. When the world gets complicated, the first reaction of the big capitals of the world, send your money to the US. So the other day I was talking with an investor. He's a client of mine. The guy is probably worth $400 million. And The other day he called me and said I was having all these issues. And I was like, what issues? You have $400 million. What issues can you have? And he said, Daniel, you can't imagine how difficult it is to invest $400 million today and be guaranteed you're going to get it back. It's not about return. It's just about getting it back. If you could guarantee I'm going to get it back 100% in the next 10 years, it's yours. But zero risk. And that's why the government is paying 0.25 or 1%. Because the big capitals of the world said, US Treasuries, you're going to pay me 1% 10 years? Yours. That's better than having your risk on your country and the devaluation. So I lived I just came back to the US, living in Canada for 3 years. And the housing in Canada, it's way worse than the US. If you think the US is expensive, Canada is 2 or 3 times more expensive. So I sold my house in Austin to move to Toronto. My house was 2 times more square foot, and my house in Canada was 3 times more expensive. And I was not living in downtown. I was living in a suburb 20 minutes away. And I spoke with Chinese investors and stuff that were in the investing in China, investing in Hong Kong. And they were leaving the house open and empty. And I was like, why are you doing that? He said, Daniel, if I lose 30%, I still keep 70%. If I keep it in my country, I'm going to lose 100%. So I prefer to get a piece of money and just put it out, even if it costs me 30%. So I have a client in Bangladesh. It's a very wealthy family in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, you could not get your money out of the country. So they had to do some massaging to get it to Dubai. And it cost them 20% of cost to get it from Bangladesh to Dubai. And I was like, are you crazy? It's costing you 20% to get it out. And the guy said, 80% is better than 100. I'll do it any day of the week.
So should we just kind of quit complaining about taxes here? Maybe. It's all about perspective, right?
So let me go to taxes.
Okay.
All right. I grew up in Mexico, and I know my Mexican law. And in the past, it was very easy to evade taxes. I have to say, it was extremely easy. You could do whatever you want, and there was 10 ways you could evade taxes. Now it's getting tougher. Now all the money is digital, and it's getting much, much tougher. But 3 years ago, I went to Canada. And when I went to Canada, my wealth manager told me, you're crazy. You don't know what you're doing. Taxes in Canada are way higher than in the US. And I went to this website to compare it, and they were like 2% more in Canada than the US. And I was like, come on, it's 2%, no problem. And I had my health insurance paid in Canada, that in the US I paid $24,000 a year.
Wait till you get Medicare. It's good.
Sorry?
Medicare. You're in. Okay.
But now, if you get Blue Cross Blue Shield,
Yeah.
you pay $2,000 to $3,000 per family per month, right? So I was going to pay $24,000 a year. So I went to Canada. But whenever you understand the Canadian tax law, what the paper says, that's what you pay. The US tax system, if you see the book, Bill, you're an expert on that. And by the way, love your talk. I have a rule in the US. Pay the most expensive lawyers and most expensive tax advisors. Believe me, they pay for themselves 20 times to 1. In Canada, what you have on the book, that's what you pay. In the US, the tax book is like 600 pages. There's one line that says, every income is taxable. The rest 600 pages are loopholes, how not to pay taxes. So if you see tax on paper, you said, well, the US is really bad. But once you go into the weeds and you hire experts and all that, you realize you could significantly lower your taxes in the US. Because the US tax system is always going to be run by the business community. In Mexico, the tax system is run by politicians, not by business owners. In the US, you have lobbyists. That is a way to give money to politicians that is public, and you could do it. And that's the way the tax law is written with the interest of the business community, always. So, yes. So I think the US has 2 difficult things in taxes. One is your inheritance tax, right? In my case, my kids are American, and my parents have 6 grandkids. the 6 grandkids are American. My father spends more with tax advisors in the US than in Mexico. And he's Mexican and lives in Mexico. Because he has most of his money in the US, and he makes more money off his returns, of his investments, than what he makes today. He's almost 80 years old. So his return on investments is way more. And his 6 grandkids are American. So he spends more of tax advisors in the US. And he's Mexican, he has never lived in the US. But it's reality. When you have your money in the US, that's what happens. So that's one, the inheritance tax. And everyone knows you could do a lot of things with that. And the second one that I think is the toughest is the worldwide income. So in Mexico, you also have worldwide income. But when I live in the US, and I'm going to pay tax in the US, I just send a letter to the Mexican IRS and said, I'm living in the US, I'm going to pay in the US, I'm going to be frozen paying tax in Mexico. And they say, fine. And I'm not paying tax in Mexico. In the US, even if you live in Timbuktu, you have to pay tax in the US of what you make in Timbuktu.
If you leave California, you got to pay taxes back in California.
Correct. So for me, the 2 issues of the tax system in the US are inheritance tax and the worldwide income, even if you don't live in the US. Any other country, when you're not living in your country, you don't pay tax in your country. Like if you're Canadian and you move to the US, you write a letter to the Canadian IRS and said, I'm living in the US, I'm going to pay tax in the US. And they said, fine, let me know when you're back. That's it. In the US, that does happen. So going back to that, and I know we have a couple more minutes. With all these 10 years that I think is going to be pretty unstable years. And by the way, everything that has gone up in the US 20, 30% are being the assets that the wealthy people buy. Where you and I put our money, everything went up 30, 40%. Because we printed 30 or 40% more money. So we're just rebalancing our assets based on value. But in the next 10 years, seeing all the instability of the world, and China, for all the issues happening, plus the one-child policy, China will not become the richest country in the world. I believe the US is going to come out way stronger in the next 10 years. We're going to the US is going to redo the politics or geopolitical system of the world, and they're going to come out much, much stronger. And something I was talking with Jim earlier. For me, all of the last 3 or 4 years of politics have been very complicated, no matter who you vote for. They've been very ups and downs. That the senators went back at 1 a.m. and confirmed the elections and said, our duty is confirming the elections, even after they tried to kill us. We're going to go back and do our duty. That means the institutions are working. In Mexico, that will have never happened. So based on that, I believe the US, out of all the complications next 10 years, tax or whatever, is going to come out stronger and better than any other country in the next 10 years. My decision to come back and become a taxpayer today is precisely that. My wife and I had a really important discussion, many months. We talk about Costa Rica. Jim has a house there. We talk about Costa Rica. We talk about Mexico, Canada. My wife is Spanish citizen, so we could choose to be in Spain. And we chose to be in the US and pay tax for here for the rest of our life. So that's kind of my sum in the chat. I know we're not going through a very comfortable time. I know. But believe me, it's better than any other country. I don't know any country that they love their politicians. And they're all aligned. They're all like this. Like in Mexico, I was telling Jim earlier, Mexico, we have a big problem with drug dealers, really big problem. The Mexican president was defending the drug dealers in a press conference 2 days ago. So the reporter was asking him, hey, are you going to go against the drug dealers? And you know what the guy said? Imagine we go against them and we destroy their crops and all that. How's the town going to live? The town lives because of the drug dealers. We have to allow them to do their business so the town will survive. I'm like, oh my God. Like, you wouldn't believe what's happening outside. So I understand we're uncomfortable in the US, and I see the news in the US, and I want to vomit. I get it. But from what I've seen in the world, still the best. and I'm voting here with my money, that is going to come out much stronger.
Well, that's perspective, is it not? That's perspective. That's helpful. All right, I can't let you off the stage here until you answer the question.
Inflation.
Inflation, deflation. I have to ask everybody, so is it okay if we ask him? I think we should. Let's put him on the spot. All right, what's it going to be?
I'm sorry I'm not going to give you a clear answer.
I didn't expect one.
So, the other day I was in a board that we're having a discussion, and the CEO of the company was asking everyone's perspective. I don't see how can we print $7 or $8 trillion and the economy doesn't bite us back in a certain way. So I think it's going to bite us back in inflation. But I'm a big believer in technology. I represent Singularity University in Austin, and I know all the technology guys, Peter and Mandy and Salim and all that. And technology is very deflationary. Yeah. And if we start getting into AI and robotics and everything that the US is investing today, we're going to be in deflationary in the next 5 years. So we're probably going to have inflation 5 or so years, but then we're going to go into deflation. If we really put technology to work and we eliminate the amount of jobs that we have, like driving. Driving is the #1 job of men in the US. Between taxi drivers, cars, trains, whatever, is the #1 job of men in the US. It's going to be gone in 10 years. What's going to happen with that? That's deflationary. So Salim Ismail, that is a good friend of mine, lived in Miami and had to move to Toronto. And he went to Toronto for 2 years and then back. He bought a Tesla. On his way up, his car drove automatic for 20% of the ride. 2 years later, he came back. The car drive on its own 80% of the time. Same car. The car got updated through Wi-Fi. He never took it to a shop, nothing. It was just updates on Wi-Fi. And he went from 20% self-drive to 80% self-drive in 2 years. Once you have that, we're going to have deflation in the US.
Watch out, dentist is coming. No, just kidding.
So that's my answer.
All right, that's good. Was that helpful? Let's give him a hand. Thank you so much. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
So glad you made it. So glad you made it. If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.